In here, I have 20 years of journals. And yes, this is an iPad mini. So when I say in here, I mean they're digital journals. They're not in some stack of fancy notebooks that I've filled for 20 years and that I have a closet full of them. They're just digital. And it's only really been in the last 18 months probably that I learned the lesson that I think has been the most valuable lesson I could learn out of 20 years of journaling. About that today. Chandler, and I like to talk about practical wisdom for mindful living. And if you're curious about what that means, I hope you'll stick with me and watch this video and maybe watch some others and get an idea for what it is that I'm talking about when I say practical wisdom for mindful living. Today specifically, we are talking about journaling. And I started journaling 20 years ago, as I already mentioned in the intro. I was in my early 30s at the time, so you do the math on where things stand now. And I did a little bit of journaling prior to that. I did it in bits and pieces, fits and starts, earlier in life in different notebooks here and there, but none of those survived, sadly, other than what I have in here. And the reason I started journaling more consistently 20 years ago is because I read the book The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. I had a hard copy to hold up for you. Started journaling so consistently 20 years ago was I read the book The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. And perhaps you're familiar with this book. If you're interested in watching a video on YouTube about journaling, I'm going to guess that you already know what this book is and where I'm going. But in case not, I'd be glad to tell you about it and introduce it to you, perhaps for the first time. The Artist's Way is a book about doing creative work. It's about unlocking, so to speak, your inner muse to unleash whatever creative work is inside of you that's waiting to come out. And so throughout the, as I recall, 12 chapters of the book, it's designed to do it a week at a time, and she has different practices that she unfolds in each week of the book. But there's one core practice that's introduced at the beginning of the book, and that is called morning pages. And what she says is from the very start, and what you need to do every day is sit down at your desk with, as she says, a pen and paper and just free write 3 pages. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what comes out of your mind, what comes out of your pen or pencil. Fill 3 pages with words. And she describes how this kind of just gets your mind going, gets you used to taking what's inside and moving it outside, and kind of unlocks your thinking. So I was really fascinated with that idea. And like I said, I had done a little bit of journaling here and there, but that was the first time I really in earnest began journaling consistently. And of course, over 20 years, there's times where I've been really steady and really faithful with it. And there's times where I've kind of stopped and started. But even after all that time, it was only about 18 months ago that I learned the most valuable lesson that I could from journaling. Like what Julia Cameron says, my journaling has primarily been digital. It has primarily been typing into a keyboard or sometime handwriting with an Apple Pencil and capturing it digitally here so that I have 20 years worth of journals that I can quickly reference and search and look back at. And I love that. I love having that available to me. I have used for the last 12 years an app called Day One. I think it's about 12 years. That's about the time when it was released. And there are no shortage of great videos about Day One as a journaling app, again, here on YouTube. So if you're not familiar with Day One, it's kind of, I would guess, the standard when it comes to digital journaling. There are other good ones out there, but it's the one that has stuck with me. It's available on all the platforms, so it's just easy to access no matter where you're coming from. And if you have the paid version, it'll sync your journaling entries across all of your devices and that sort of thing. So it's a great place to go with it. And so like I say, for the last 12 years, I have been capturing so much in there. I've been capturing these morning pages. I often capture other stuff in there as well. I capture pictures when I'm someplace unique or interesting. Sometimes I'll capture just notes about some person I met with for coffee or for a meal and had a great conversation with. One of the most things I've done in there, one of the most valuable things to me that I've done in there is I take a picture of every bag of coffee that I bring home and that I brew at home, so I can look back at years and years worth of what bags of coffee that I've had at home and see which ones I've had before that I really like. And so there's a lot that's going on in my Day One journal. You might have noticed though that I said I've been journaling in Day One for 12 years and that I have 20 years worth of journals in here. That's because I found Day One so valuable when I first got into it that I actually went through the other apps that I used before. I think for a while I used OneNote by Microsoft. I think back then I was more of a Windows user. I used an app on the Mac called Yojimbo for a while. I collected all of those different journal entries from all those different places and moved them into day one with the appropriate date. There were even a few handwritten journals along the way that I captured and I put in day one. And I'm so glad that I did that, because that is what has allowed me to now tell you about the most valuable lesson that I've learned from journaling. And it is simply this: review your journal. Now, you might say, well, of course, isn't that why you journal? And I suppose that's the case. I mean, for all those years, I always anticipated that someday, I would go back and read my journal, but I didn't. Occasionally, like I would want to look up something and I could do a search for it or look at the date and, find it. You can even track by location in day one if you track that, and that's great. But I did not regularly review what I had tucked away in this journal. And about 18 months ago then, I just decided I'm going to start reviewing back the on this day section of day one. See, there's this little tab you can push on day one and it says on this day. And when you do that, it just collects all of your journal entries that happened on such and such day. Today is February 16th. And so this morning I went and I saw all of my journal entries from February 16th for the last 20 years. And a number of years were not present, but I think there were 22 total because sometimes I would enter multiple things per day. I have found that so valuable. Now, let me say this. If you don't do this, and if you never do this, I would not tell you that journaling is a wasted exercise. I would not tell you that those words are lost to all time, because just the process of sitting down and taking the thoughts out of your heart, taking the thoughts out of your mind, and having them come out gives you a sense of clarification. It helps to see the things that you're stewing on inside on paper, and sometimes it crystallizes them, and sometimes it takes away their power and makes them seem less urgent. Sometimes it makes them seem more urgent. So of course, I would tell you, don't stop journaling, even if you never intend to look back. Still a great exercise. But for me, and what I would hope you would consider, is the greatest benefit to journaling comes from looking back and reviewing. So as I was thinking about this, I actually just journaled the other day about what has been the benefit of reflecting and reading my prior year's journal entries. And I think there's three themes that come to mind and three things that emerge as I do this each day. The first one is I recover memories that I'm glad to relive, and maybe sometimes hard to relive, but I generally think that I have a pretty good memory. But there's been plenty of times where, looking through these journal entries, I'm reminded of a time I took one of my kids to a coffee shop with me, or a little day trip we did, or a conversation I had with a friend that I'm just happy to remember and happy to relive that. And sometimes it even means I fire off a text to that friend or one of my children and say, hey, I just read about this. Just memories that I remember. Sometimes I surface things that I don't remember. And so it's nice to recall, oh, I forgot about that person, or I forgot about that conversation that I had with that person. Or I forgot about this memory when we went and did this together. And it's fun to be able to see some of those things. In spite of what I think is my good memory, it's not always as good as I think it is. So one of the benefits of doing this is just sheerly for the purpose of reflecting on your life and enjoying where you have been and what you have done. The second theme, though, that I've seen start to emerge is I see these patterns that have been present in my life that I'm aware of. Work back through some of these journal entries and see longings that I've expressed along the way, or desires that I've expressed along the way, or patterns that were evident in my life about things that I thought I wanted. Also look back and see that was a long-term desire that I had that I now see is expressed some other way. And I'm glad to see that I went through that journey to get here, but it's also allowed me to let go of things that I thought were important or I thought wanted to be important to me, and to now say, that did not become part of my life, and that's okay. It is okay to not do everything. I'm reminded, I recently read Oliver Burkeman's latest book, Meditations for Mere Mortals, and that's one of the things that he talks about is our capacity and our time is limited, so what should we focus on? And reading back through my journal has helped me to see, yes, there were things that I might have wanted to do along the way, and it's probably okay that they didn't happen, and like I say, some of them did. But the third piece that has really surprised me, the third thing that has emerged, has surfaced as I've been reading through these journal entries, is the patterns that have been present in my life that I think I wasn't willing to recognize. And it's been more than a few times where I've read something that I wrote in a journal 10 years ago, something that I wrote in a journal 15 years ago about self-awareness that I had about desire, like good desire that was in my life, or a point of pain, a point of struggle in my life that somehow I just moved on from. I think I didn't want to name it. I think perhaps I didn't want to face it. And only now, in reviewing my journal, am I able to see how there are things about my life that I have wanted to be different, that I have wanted to change, that I kind of just kept setting aside. And so now here, as I look back, it's been immensely helpful, and I would say a rich experience to say, no more. If this pattern existed, if this point of longing for something existed and it's still with me all this time, what does it mean now to take hold of that and begin to arrange my life toward that? Because it's been something that's been present for a long time, and it's something that I want to engage with now. Sometimes it's helpful to look back and see some of the things that were clearly spoken and then pushed off, or even some of the things that were unspoken that are so clearly evident now, and just recognize that's part of who I am. That's part of who I have been and who I still am, and move forward from those things. So I hope that you'll consider, if you don't already, reviewing your journal. Maybe you do. Maybe you also have suggestions for what you've learned as you review your journal. One of the things I would love to hear in the comments below is, do you review your journal? And what's been beneficial for you? Especially, I would actually love to hear from maybe those of you who are not digital journalers like I am. Maybe some of you who follow all those studies about how pen to paper is more beneficial and that kind of thing. I would love to know what it looks like for you to review your journal when you can't simply pull the on this day. I mean, maybe you digitize, maybe you take pictures or scan in all those old journals so you can do something similar. But maybe you just have, I have bookshelves over there. Maybe you just have a bookshelf full of journals. What does it look like for you to be able to go back and review those journals? I would love for you to share that in the comments with others below. Thanks for watching again. As I said, my name is John Chandler, and I like to talk about practical wisdom for mindful living. I'm only a few videos in, so I would welcome your comments as I figure out how to do this well and how to do this in a way that's more beneficial for you. Please, of course, leave comments, but I would also covet your subscriptions if you would be willing to grant me that and give me a run here. And of course, comments and likes are always welcome. Thanks for watching.